Hello.
Hello.
Am I the only one in the meeting?
You know what? Something's going on.
Yeah, there's no video.
Yeah, there's no video. And I was seeing there is something going on my computer, but I can't get it because my internet connection is not very strong. I'm trying to think, how did I get in two different places here at once? I don't know. Oh, this stuff is driving me up the wall.
It's okay. I hate technology too.
Yeah, okay, there's two of us then.
Yes. I was like, I hate this Zoom stuff.
Okay, did you get on with the Zoom?
I used the code you sent me in the email, and I just
Okay.
went to my Zoom app and put it in.
Yeah.
Everybody else is texting me that they got kicked out and that you started another meeting.
Okay. Well, again, I'm not figuring this stuff out. I need to just open. So I'll try that. Again, why is it no? Okay, so this is Jamie who I'm speaking to, right?
Yeah, this is Jamie.
Okay.
The rest of the class said they got kicked out for some reason.
Okay. Well, I wonder if, hey, I see Alma's coming in. That's good.
There we go.
Okay, so they got kicked out because I was just on with them on my computer, and then all of a sudden, I got kicked out. This is weird. Okay. Well, hello, Alma. If you are out there and you can hear us, you need to unmute your microphone and let me know you're at least hearing us.
Yeah, I can. I don't know why it muted me automatically. That was weird.
I think it does that automatically when we come on. We have to, I think we'll have to unmute when we come in.
Okay. I just sent the other people the link, the new link, so they should be here soon.
Fabulous. Thank you. I'm glad somebody's taking care of me because I was just telling Jamie that I'm more frustrated by this technology than I can probably express in words. So.
I told him I'm right there with him. You all
Yeah,
know.
same here. I was saddened by our email today or yesterday. I can't even remember.
All right, we got a few more. Hello, Jeremiah. And let's see, I don't recognize the email addresses yet, so I'll have to see who else that is. That's Jennifer. And is it Cambria or Cambria?
It's Cambria.
Say it again, please.
Cambria.
Cambria, okay. Well, hey, Cambria figured it out. I've got video of you. And look at this. You guys are all populating, and I'm not. What in the world am I doing wrong? How did you guys figure that? Because I'm not seeing video here, and I usually can.
Bottom left, start video.
Your stop video button isn't clicked or anything marked.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Who said that?
There you go. Me.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, we'll call that good. Well, whoever it was who was trying to get the rest of the group, sorry about getting kicked out of the Zoom meeting, especially after last night. That was probably a little bit disconcerting, thinking there's something else going on again tonight. We're gonna figure it out. Can somebody tell me if this looks like the whole of the group that was on? Or are there still other?
Oh no,
We're still missing some.
We are.
Bonnie was the last one. I think everybody who was in the other one is here.
Okay. Yeah, I don't expect that everyone's going to be able to be
Is it
here
here now?
tonight. I know switching the
Bonnie?
night is an
Bonnie?
inconvenience.
Bonnie's here.
Okay, good. Yeah, I know switching the night is an inconvenience, and it's going to probably keep some people from being able to be a part of tonight. And for that, I am sorry. And I'm going to, I was wondering how I was going to handle this. I'm just going to come right out and say, I am sorry about last night. I just whiffed. I don't know what happened. I just got home and got busy, and it had been on my calendar all day long. And got done, was doing a little dinner prep, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, we had dinner, we had a nice evening, and then I look at my watch and say, is it Wednesday night?
We're a very forgiving group, so
You know,
you're
I am
okay.
so glad for that. Thank you. Yeah, that is awesome, and I appreciate the grace that you're extending to me. But I do apologize, and both for the time that you guys spent last night. We'll make up for it tonight. We'll do a good job tonight. We'll keep it tight. We'll answer any questions. We'll get off to a good, clean start for the class. Generally, I think our Zoom is going to run between 40 and 60 minutes a night. We'll try to keep it at least to 40 tonight. But that's plenty to get things started. This first week for the bib class is not a real heavy week, and so it's kind of a good time to just get our bearings and get some of the initial assignments worked on. I've seen some of you already posting your responses to, your exposure or experience with the Bible and the questions we have of just kind of getting to know you. So I'm excited to read those and get started. Couple things real quick. I am John. You can call me John. You can call me Professor. You can call me pretty much whatever you want. And you can reach me not just on the Zoom nights, but throughout the week through the email. And I know many of you reached out to me even last night, today, checking to see if I was okay. I appreciate that. If we find that that's not adequate, the email and Zoom, we can address that and go. I generally don't put out my text line because between my day job as a local church pastor, and especially with everything going on with the COVID and shutdown and going fully online with church and trying to figure out technology, and now getting ready to reopen, it's been kind of crazy. But it's been an exciting time, and I'm really hopeful for this class. I love teaching 438. For those who have already had, I think most of you already have had the BIB 314, which is the kind of introductory to the BIB program class. I know most of you must have had it with somebody else because I see through the roster, most of the names are unfamiliar to me. But that's good. We'll get a little cross-pollinating and see a little bit of how it goes. This is really a different class than the other, but there are some real key similarities. Some of the similarities will be that a lot of the books are the same. You'll find that for the last class, you had the BIB 314. We used the main book of our text was this particular Bible, the New Oxford Annotated Bible. And we use that. It's less critical when we're online, but it's still, there'll be a number of sections that will have you read, not just the Bible passages, which would be the same in any Bible, but this also has some extra helps, some background information, some just assists for you to learn more about what it is we're studying. And we'll look at a few of those throughout the course of these next 6 weeks. So hopefully you have this already from your previous class. If not, I recommend you get this as soon as you can. The other books that we'll be looking at, I'll hold up 2 of them, and these are the 2 you should have from the BIB 314. It's the How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth. This becomes a real important book. It was a key book for the BIB 314, but it becomes even more important for this class. Upside Down Kingdom by Don Craybill. This is a book that is supportive of this class, although it's more critical in the other class. So if you took this course or you took the earlier class, you're very familiar with Craybill and his book. And then we have 2 other books that are part of this course, Let the Children Come, and I didn't see this. The one book I don't bring out as the one I can. That's by Bonnie Miller McLemore, and it's a good book, especially for people training to be educators. And then finally, we have Grimsroot, or Ted Grimsroot's book, God's Healing Strategy, which most classes find that to be one of the more enjoyable books they read for this course. So, but that's again, those 2 books, the Miller McLemore book and the Grimsroot book, aren't books that you've had before, had to deal with before. So those become kind of the key pieces of this class. Unlike the other class, which was focused mostly on one particular book, the book of Matthew, out of the Bible, this course really takes a broad view. And so we're going to be covering, in a real sparse way, the entirety of the Bible. And so it feels a little more intimidating, but to be quite honest with you, the way we handle it, even in a 6-week course, will give you a better handle on what the Bible is about, and not only how it came together, because we don't deal too much about that aspect of it, but we'll tell you a little bit more about how it fits together. The Grimsroot book is really good at that, as well as, say, the Fee and Stewart book, that talk a lot about some of the different types of material that the Bible contains. And that's helpful, I think, for most people, because for most of us, we're not too familiar with the Bible. And so when we try to jump in, we don't really know what we're dealing with or know how to handle it. But as we begin to see that it's a book full of different books, and there are different types of literature that populate the pages of the Bible. What we're going to refer to as different genres of literature, and each one has its own rules for interpretation, its own rules for understanding, and you handle them differently. But unless we know that there's going to be different genres that we're dealing with, sometimes we try to interpret it all the same, which only leads us to frustration and only leads us to a greater sense of not wanting to have anything to do with it. So what I found, at least in the past with our Bib 438, is that though it's a course that hopes to kind of give you an introduction to all of the Bible, it does so in a way that gives you a little more familiarity, and it makes it feel a little less intimidating. So that's my hope. And I've not taught this class online before. So if you've not had a Bible class online before, we're all in the same boat together. And so that's not sure that's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing, but we're all in this boat together. So really glad to make your acquaintance tonight. One of the things that I like to do with every class that I do face-to-face, and I want to try to do this with the online courses that I have the privilege of teaching as well, is to each week have a moment to just check in and ask how you're doing. If there's anything specifically that you would appreciate prayer for, we will take time each week to begin with a word of prayer. We'll take a little time to hear if there's anything specific that you would like to ask. If you're bold enough to ask, please do. And we'll keep a running list. I'll be praying for you throughout the week. And I've seen that opportunity really be a great thing for classes as we go through, that you find others are praying along with you. People care for you, and they will all lift up that concern, whatever it might be. And we find there's a lot of strength in that. So tonight, before we talk a little bit more about the class, I kind of just touched on the books, and I'll talk a little bit about what is different about this class, as well as what some of the similarities would be to the class previous. And then just jump us into our first week, the lesson for tonight. Are there any specific prayer requests that you'd be willing to, or desiring that we would be aware of and pray for?
Yeah, there's a lot of us in this group that are finishing up this last class. So we're stressed, and we have until Friday midnight. So just lift us all up that we can get what we need done despite the life's challenges.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. I will be praying for you on that. I know there's a lot of classes that's the same. They're in the same boat. It seemed like there was no gap in between the classes this time. Yeah, same thing. I was actually did some work last night finishing up. I'm still not done because the final projects were all due for my previous class last night. So while I'm supposed to have been starting with you, I was also supposed to have been finishing with my other class. And of course, once those papers get posted, it's not until today that I can begin grading. So I'm in the middle of the same thing, trying to balance everything, and really kind of in a way, still dealing with two classes. So the good news, though, Jennifer, is this: I will pray for you. Second good news is this: that this first week is not a real heavy week as we get started. But because it is a 6-week course, the class, there is a lot of material to cover. But this isn't a heavy week, so hopefully that'll be a good fit for you. But thank you for sharing that. We will pray for each of you going through this double dipping time.
I have a question. It's not a prayer request, but are we able to use a different Bible if we have one already?
Yeah, is this Alma?
Yeah.
Yes, you can. You will look at, if you look in your syllabus, Alma, what you will see is that there's a few places where there is reading assignments from what says NOAB, and that is that particular Bible, the New Oxford Annotated Bible. And there are some like introduction to the book of Genesis, which gives some historical background or just how to better understand. There's some things some Bible helps that are good in that Bible that we require in the class for reading. That said, the majority of the reading, though, wouldn't have to be in that particular Bible. You could have another Bible if you've already got one. The only challenge, and this is the main challenge when we're face-to-face, is that because there are different versions of the Bible, and sometimes they sound slightly different. It's hard if we're trying to read the same text together. But because we're online, we're not going to be doing very much of that. And so if you were using a different version, that would be okay.
Okay.
So yeah, you can probably get away with it. And if you had someone in the class who would be willing to maybe help you by scanning a couple of pages here or there, or what have you, you could probably make do with a different Bible and not have to spend the extra money on that one.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, if you've not had Bib 314 yet, though, just be aware that that'll also be one of the required readings for that class. So if you were to purchase it, you would be using it a second time around anyway. Have you had 314 yet?
No, I have not.
Okay, all right. So, and that may be a while because depending on where you are in your track towards graduation, you may have some time still before you take that class. So, but no, you can, absolutely. So my answer is yes, if you need to.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you have a specific Bible you would want to use or you have already?
Yeah, I got it. It's a Catholic Living Bible.
Okay.
I don't know what it's based on, but it's real simple to read, so that's why I like it.
Yeah, no, it's really good. This week, let me just speak to that before we go to our prayer time, Alma. One of the things in the Fee and Stewart book, it's called How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth. In chapter 2, it talks about why there are so many different versions. For example, not just Catholic, Protestant, but the Living Bible, for example, which would be the same for the Catholic and Protestant, except that the Catholic Bible has a couple more books than the Protestants do. But the translation of it would be the same. But it's going to be a very different feel. And as you're reading it, it's going to read a little bit differently than, say, for example, the New Revised Standard Version that I'm recommending that you use for the class. And you'll read in that chapter 2 about some of the reasons why. I really have no issue with using the Living Bible as a main Bible for reading. In fact, it probably would be helpful. But when you read that chapter 2, you'll see, okay, I see a little bit of the difference. The Living Bible is a little more loose in its translation, which tries to get the meaning more than the literal word for word type of translation, because it's trying to capture the thought and the meaning of it, as opposed to the New Revised Standard, which is a little bit more, maybe a little more cumbersome. It doesn't read quite as smoothly, but it's trying to retain the original languages as much as the grammar and wording even though we're translating from, ancient languages that aren't even spoken anymore today. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but for the reading purposes, Alma, I would stick with it. When we come to, say, at the close of the book, close of the class, and get to the final assignment is kind of a real kind of a deep dive into a very short book in the New Testament, the book of Philemon. You might want to have by then at least have access to a New Revised Standard, because then we're going to be looking really closely at the wording and the words. And for that part, you might want to be on the same page with all the rest of the students in the class.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I said we're going to do a short meeting tonight, and here I go and talk forever and ever and ever. So I'm sorry, I do that sometimes. So anybody else? Good question, though. Very good question. And I hope the answer was understandable. Any other prayer requests? All right, hearing none. Let's take a moment. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and pray. Just brief prayer, and then we'll continue on with the evening. So God, I thank you for tonight and for each one of the students who's been able to come and be a part of our gathering tonight through Zoom. I thank you for the technology that affords us the opportunity to continue our education and continue meeting and being encouraged by each other, even during this time when so much has been removed from our normal day-to-day life. I pray again for those who are struggling, either fighting against the pandemic or those who are maybe struggling with the virus, families who have lost or families who are worried. And for those who continue to feel that sense of dis-ease as we move to a time of beginning to rediscover a little bit of normalcy. God, I pray that you would help us as we walk through this time. I pray for each of the students as we begin this new class, and especially for all those who are still feeling the pressure of the class that is just wrapped up, and final assignments are still needing to be done. So for their ability to hold both intention and to balance and finish well, even as we open up and get started, God, I pray for an extra measure of your help for each one. And I pray for this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. Well, again, the syllabus is going to be our friend as we move forward, but there may be a few minor changes as we go along. Again, this is my first crack at doing this course, Biblical Perspectives for Educators, in the online, and so I'm learning a new Moodle, and it has a lot of things which some of which are coming to me from the university, and some which I'm adding to make the online experience as close as we can to the face-to-face experience that I've become used to, and I've had the chance to share over these last years. I've been teaching here at FPU about 6 years now, teaching exclusively in the biblical department because that's really the only thing I know. I wish I had other skill sets. I really don't, and so it's been a nice fit for me. I live here in Merced County. I know most of you live here in Merced County. We've lived here for over 30 years, and here in Atwater, which is now my home, we've lived here for 28 years. And so this has become home for me. But it's just been recently in the last few years I've started teaching at FPU and found it's been a lot of fun, and I find it's a real engaging place, and I enjoy getting to know you. I'll tell you a secret. Probably the thing I enjoy the most, because I'm used to teaching and talking about the Bible or exploring the Bible with different people in the church setting, but in the academic setting, with people who don't necessarily either have a shared background or a shared faith experience with me, I find that dealing with what the Bible is and how it begins to make any sense for them is kind of an exciting thing, and I really enjoy that avenue. So not trying to cram anything down anyone's throat, but just getting a chance to share a little bit of what I know in a way that I hope helps make the Bible a little more relevant for you. And what does it mean for you as a future educator? How do we take either part of the message or part of the truth or part of the experience of being people who understand a little bit more about the Bible? How does that begin to work itself out through our lives and into the classrooms? Those are interesting questions, and I do enjoy wrestling with those with you. I haven't always been a pastor, although almost always. When I was in college, it was my goal in life was to become a school teacher. I did that for a few years before I sensed a call from God to spend more of my time involved in church ministry, which has then now come kind of full circle. I still do the church ministry, but I'm able to get into the arena of academics once again, and that's kind of exciting. Most of my early teaching experience was at the elementary school level. I'm not sure how many of you are planning on working towards that goal, but that's part of my background too. So it's kind of fun to do the 438 because it is dealing specifically with people looking to involve themselves in a career in education. Okay, before we jump in, and I got maybe one or two things I want to really cover well to get us started tonight. Are there any questions, though, that are kind of lingering for you before we jump into a little bit of what Fee and Stewart says and a little bit of how we get started this week with the book of Genesis? So any specific questions that you have coming to tonight as we get ready to launch?
I have a question, but I don't know if it's ahead of the game. It's about the assignments.
Yes.
It looks like only 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3 are like active or submittable. Are we only doing those three, or are we doing all of the different down to 1.7?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeremiah. And if that is the case, then there's something up. And so let me jump into that. I won't do it now probably because it would take me more time to figure that out. But we should have 1.1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Okay, and then everything beyond that, you should be able to access. They should be more of forums or things such as that. But if you can't get into like 1.5 and 1.6, I'll look at it once we get off the Zoom, and if there's something in the way that I can see, I will open it up. But if you see that you still can't get to it or can't post, shoot me an email because I do want to get to the bottom of it. We should be able to have let's see, like 1.4. It's a forum. 1.5. Reflecting on chapter 1 out of Miller Macklemore, you should be able to post some pictures and some thoughts about how those pictures. What it says about children in our culture. 1.6 should be a response to the video. Yeah, and then there's a forum just to talk about the beginnings of this week. So yeah, you should have access down to 1.7. But those aren't really assignments. They're more interaction and forum type work. Jeremiah, is that what you're seeing, or are those not available to you?
So I haven't quite seen, I guess, the form. So
Okay.
it says in the blue boxes, this is a question and answer form. In order to see other responses to these questions, you must first post your answer. I don't see how to post there.
Huh. Okay. Can I ask, is anybody else seeing the same thing or having the same issue? Because it may be something that I've not got set up. It's quite possible.
Yeah, when you go to open the forums, there's nothing there. It says you haven't posted a question yet and things. Like there's nowhere for us to type anything to respond.
Okay. Well, that is good to know. Thank you. But you have 1.1 through 1.3 is available to you, but everything below that is nothing.
So we will be doing 1 through 1.7 though.
Yes, you will. And I'll get that open if I can. Again, sometimes with technology things, I need to get help and I won't be able to get help tonight. But if I can get it open, I will make sure those other four are open. Again, those are not heavy assignments. The video you watch is a very engaging video. The other has to do with some reading from the Bible, which is part of our reading this week. Just a few easy chapters to skim over. So the answer is yes. They're not big assignments, but they all will be available, hopefully available tonight. Thank you.
And one last question on that is, I didn't see any due dates on them. Are they due before the next class, or
Yeah, thank you. Good question. Yeah, all the assignments, if there's not a due date on it, then I will look to either incorporate when forums. I try to get forums, your initial post by Friday, and then so that people have a chance to respond to your post, and that I give for that secondary a response until Sunday. But most assignments will be due on Sunday night, midnight, before we move into week. The rhythm of the week, unless otherwise posted, will be things are due Sunday, so we can begin the new week on Monday. And then we'll do our Zoom on Wednesday, provided that I don't space again next week. So, okay, is great question. Thank you for asking that, Jeremiah. Any other questions? Again, like that, that's really helpful because I think those are important pieces that we need to all be on the same page. Okay, 1, 4 through 7. We'll get them open tonight. Okay. Real good. Okay, how many? I'm not going to even ask that question because I won't be able to get a good response. Never mind that. If you've not had BIB 314 before, there's something I think really important, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit right now, and I'm going to be using the book from Fee and Stewart. If you've got the book close and handy, I'm going to point out a couple pages as we talk about a real key part of the BIB program here at FPU. One of the things that kind of weaves its way through both classes is a model for interpretation that FPU calls the three worlds model. In a nutshell, it's taking three different looks or three different perspectives on any given passage or text, and looking at it from the three different angles that we'll talk about tonight gives us a better chance of understanding what the original intent of the text was, and even more ultimately to find out how, if or how it applies to us today. One of the things, one of the challenges of the Bible is that it's a very ancient book. I mean, the new section of the Bible is 2,000 years old, and some of the older sections push back almost 4,000 years. And so it's ancient. It was written originally in different languages than what we speak. And so everything has been translated. You've got this gap of time. You've got this gap of different cultures, because now it's coming into this modern 21st century North American culture for us. And because of that, it becomes real important to become, as we read, we have to become interpreters ourselves. So in the Fee and Stewart book, it does a really nice job of beginning to open that up. So I just want to point, well, a couple things actually. If you have Fee and Stewart with you in chapter 1, if you'll turn to page 22, down the second paragraph, Fee and Stewart kind of lay their cards on the table, so-called, and say, this is really what we're after. The aim of good interpretation, or for you and me, just reading, because we need to interpret what we read, is simple, and that is to get at the plain meaning of the text. And that's really, that's the goal, to understand what the author's intent was as best we can, being we can't meet the authors, we can't ask them any questions. And so we have to ask some particular questions depending on the type of material it is, and depending on what it is. The questions will change somewhat, but we have to try to get back to what the original intent was. And so the three worlds model that we'll talk about, and you'll see some stuff in your opening session there on Moodle about it. But in Fee and Stewart, in chapter 1, again, that's one of our reading assignments this week. On page 27, at the very bottom of the page, it's going to introduce a couple of words that will be probably unfamiliar to you, because they're words that just get used for Bible interpretation nerds like me. So at the very bottom of that page 27, it says the first task, and then it says the word that may be new to you is called exegesis. The word exegesis here that Fee and Stewart use they use almost synonymously with what FPU would call the historical world. And so again, in that first paragraph there on exegesis, it says the primary work of the primary is primarily a historical task. To attempt to hear the word as the original recipients would have heard it, to find out what the original intent of the words were when the author wrote them. And so this becomes the first place we begin. We want to look and say, what was the historical world of the author? What were the presuppositions or the assumptions that he or she, but all the biblical authors were he's, so what they would have made? What were the cultural context of where this is coming out of? Because that does shape how this is then a response. And oftentimes, if in a particular text, we need to address some of the questions like, okay, the world was different in this time. And maybe we have to try to draw our understanding of how that world was different. A lot of things kind of fit into this category. You'll find that if you're talking about a geography, if you're talking about distance, they didn't use miles or kilometers. They have different measurements. And if you don't understand what those measurements are, you won't get the point of some things. They didn't use dollars or Bitcoin. They had other denominations or types of denominations of coinage or money that was used to transact. And they will use those terms rather than using our modern terms. And so it's easy for us to get lost. Measurements, whether it be something of size or, instead of using gallons or meters, there are different types of measurements. And so it's important to recognize that in this historical context, as well as some of the cultural things, stories, especially of the book of Genesis, which is really, really old, sometimes it's important to understand what the cultural context was then, because things that might have been seen as normal or acceptable in that day might not seem as normal or acceptable in our day. And we have to understand that we're talking about different worlds. So we need to try to find that truth and remove the culture so we can understand it in our present culture. The second piece of this learning to do exegesis is what's called the literary world. And that's where, and again, you won't see the term literary world in Fee and Stewart, but as you read those paragraphs and those pages about exegesis, you will see that the literary context or literary content, both of which make up the literary world, are described there. And so then we look at the text itself and say, okay, what type of material is this? Is it a parable? Is it a narrative? Is it a poem? There's a lot of things that we can begin to look, and each of those is going to have their own rules for interpretation. And what's being said, how does it fit with other pieces, either other pieces in different parts of the Bible, or how does it fit in the context of the story that is ongoing? And so those are important questions we'll ask, what we call the literary world, which we actually look at the text itself. We'll have some assignments coming up that'll flesh that out better for you. And finally, the other funny word is the one on page 33. You see it in the big bold heading there. It says the second task. And then the word there is called hermeneutics. So if you really want to impress your friends and they'll think that you're becoming a Bible nerd, start dropping words like hermeneutics or exegesis on them, and they'll say, you're going crazy, you're becoming one of them. But the bottom line for the word hermeneutics here, and you can read it there on page 33, I just pointed out to you so you will take a look at it really carefully as you read through, is that what is the Bible's meaning of this particular passage or text? What does it mean for me as I apply it to my life? What does it mean in the here and now? And so what we want to do is take the literary stuff, what is actually said, the picture that's painted, what's the point in its original context, understand its original context in the historical view, and then take that meaning and bring it into our present context that it applies to my life. If we don't do that, we will run up against cultural differences or time frame differences that cause us to miss the point or get a different interpretation of what it really ought to be for us. So that chapter 1 is a real critical chapter for us just to get started and I think you'll find it helpful. There's a few other, I think, important pieces. I know chapter 1 and chapter 2 are both part of our reading assignment this week. So being Stewart's kind of the key piece for us. And then the last piece that I just want to touch on briefly before I go one more time to questions is that we'll be beginning this week with our Bible reading in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And we begin at that very front part. So as you're getting familiar with it, maybe you've not opened a Bible for a long time, or maybe never really have gotten to know the Bible much. Genesis is the first of many sections or books, we call them, inside the Bible. And we'll start right there. And we're going to begin this week looking at the creation narratives, which are in Genesis 1 and then also in Genesis 2. And as you read them, I want you to read with a particular mind or a particular eye towards this. Look for the differences because it almost feels like there are two different creation accounts put side by side that didn't cause a problem for the ancient Jewish people, but sometimes causes us to stumble, makes us wonder why. Why are they so different? And I think the answer for the difference is in what is their purpose. And so that's something that we can struggle with. We'll talk a little bit about it next week on our Zoom meeting. But look at Genesis 1, and as you read through Genesis 1, the very first chapter of the Bible, read through it with this in mind. What am I seeing that seems to be repetitive? Maybe this is a clue for what's going on here. What are some of the things that we hear over and over again? Because there is a kind of a rhythm, a going around. There is a structure, a very significant structure to this opening poem, if you want to call it that, creation poem. And so there's a lot of clues as you look at the rhythm and the structure of it. You'll see that as you move into chapter 2, that the structure changes radically. In fact, you'll see a video this week by Dr. Sandra Richter, and she will talk about some of those differences. Even the wording is different. Wording they use for create, wording they use for the personhood of God. There's a lot of differences in these two, and certainly it becomes much more kind of a story form. It's the beginning of a story that engages us to maybe begin to find our place in that story. So take a look at those two early accounts, and then we'll move forward, beginning this thing called Old Testament narrative. And that's what we'll that's our first genre that we'll look at is both a little bit of poetic as well as narrative. Next week, we'll look more at something we're going to call law or legal material that's in the Bible. We'll look at other genres, including poetry, wisdom literature, the letters. There's a lot of different things that we'll end up using or looking at that I think will be helpful. As we understand what they are, it'll begin to make a little more sense out of the Bible that we're looking at. So Genesis 1:1 is where we begin, and it's a good place to start. So again, as you read that, look for the rhythm, look for what seems to jump out in what's being repeated, or kind of giving almost a little bit of redundancy, because I think that was the author's intent, that we're going to see some things that jump out at us as we begin. Okay, any other questions then? I was going to have you do a little bit of reading of Genesis 1 together, but it'd be hard to do in our Zoom meeting. So let's go ahead and just go to questions. Any questions for this week other than getting 1:4 through 1:7 open? Okay, well, I tell you what, let's go ahead and just get this class started then. Best of luck to you, and my prayers will be with you as you get your assignment done for your previous class. You say it's due tomorrow night? Okay, well then you guys got things to do tonight, don't you? Okay, so we'll call this class good and we'll get it started. But yeah, I'll be looking forward to reading some of the assignments and just learning a little bit more about you through your what's your familiarity with the Bible and such. I'll look forward to that. But thank you guys again. I'll hang on here if you have any other questions or just want to touch base following. I'll just kind of leave the group open, but feel free to check out and get back to business on your other class. Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So just to be clear, all of our assignments are due before the next class session.
Correct. And so our pattern is a Monday through Sunday pattern. And then we have our Zoom on Wednesday.
Okay.
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 And for this week, because you're doing another class and because I'm just now announcing that to you and it's only 3 days away from when the Sunday is, I won't be docking you for late work this week. Okay. So if you are straining with the other class and you don't get it all done this week, don't strain, don't blow your Sunday trying to get it done. Do the best you can. If it comes in Monday or Tuesday, that's fine.
Okay. That sounds great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
One other question.
Yeah.
Assignment 1.3, it talks about a 500 word count, but doesn't talk about like APA format. When I started listing the characteristics between the two, I kind of did it in a chart. Is that okay, or does it need to be written in like a like MLA or APA?
Okay. So you're talking about
Make a list of characteristics in Genesis 1.1 through 2.3 and make a list of characteristics. So I just kind of charted it instead of.
good.
That's okay.
Yeah, I think a chart would be actually probably really engaging, Jeremiah. It would probably be a nice way to look at it. Because, yeah, you're going to see the differences in that 1.3, and if you look at the two of them side by side, you'll see a lot. I'm sure if you've already charting, you've already noticed. But yeah, I think a chart would be fine.
Okay, great.
Happy to look for it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll see you guys next week. Thank you.
See you next week. Next Wednesday. That's
Oh,
right.
next Wednesday. Yeah.
Wednesday. That's right. Okay. Thank you.
Remember, I'm just kidding.
I will.